Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of the Learning in Law podcast. My name's Tom. I am the co-chair of Learning in Law, and I'm joined by Yaz, who is our branding and communication exec. A reminder that our previous episodes with Steve Rowland on creating effective PowerPoint and Joanna Gordoin on emotional intelligence are both available on YouTube and Spotify. Today we're discussing the multi-generational workforce, and we're joined by Dr. Katie Best, leadership coach and consultant. Katie is a visiting fellow at LSE and a visiting research fellow at King's College London. Katie's PhD in 2009 was on workplace communication and management, and given how important these topics are in the context of today's discussion, we're delighted that she's here. In addition, Katie's book, The 10 Toughest Leadership Problems and How to Solve Them, is out now, and we'll be discussing leadership with regards to generational differences later. Katie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's start with quite an open question. Why do you think the narrative around generational differences is increasing?
So I think the big thing is that the media loves polar opposites and loves any situation where it can go, there's some people in this camp, there's some people in this camp, and we're going to pit them against one another. I think the reality, although we're going to talk about the multi-generational workforce and the fact that there are some differences and tease those out, I think there's actually a lot more that unites people than divides them. A lot more brings them together than pulls them apart. I think we need to remember that as kind of the framing or the caveat when we're talking today.
Yeah. So you've just said there that there's more that unites us than separates us, and I love that. But can you expand on that just a little bit more?
Yeah, we're all humans, right? So that's great. That's a tick in the box initially. The fact that we all want to find work meaningful. We all do a job because we need a salary, we need a roof over our head, but hopefully we're also going to go to work and have a sense of purpose and a sense of progress. These things are no different whether you are the office junior or whether you're the managing partner. It's the same thing that's driving us and making us want to go to work or need to go to work.
So one of the questions I really wanted to ask you today was around what are the common points of friction that you usually see, particularly across multi-generational firms, and what kind of advice would you give to anyone watching who's experiencing those same issues?
Yeah, so the big thing that I see repeatedly is senior leaders in law firms, not just partners, but senior leaders, people who've been in the firm for a while. They feel aggrieved that junior lawyers or junior anyone else doesn't want to work as hard in inverted commas as they did when they were juniors. Yeah. And so that idea that the only way that you can earn your stripes is by putting in those like multi-hour weeks and having an expectation that that's how to do it. And so it causes friction when the juniors say there's other ways of being a lawyer, there's other ways of working in this firm, I don't have to play that game. And I think the big frustration is what is going to happen if those people leave? All that's going to happen is they're going to be replaced by another group of people with very similar views who you're then going to have to go through the whole same process with. And so trying to work with that point of friction and instead we'll come on to solutions in a bit, but I think that's the real challenge and where we see the major friction.
Brilliant.
And I think we'll try and look at it relatively isolated today. So I think we've got the leadership role in that. We've also got the juniors and their responsibility to have that conversation and manage upwards. And obviously as L&D professionals ourselves, and obviously the people watching, listening tend to be in L&D, I think there's a conversation around what we can do to support as well. But let's start with the leaders, because I sort of teased that in the intro as well. What responsibility did they have to bridge that generational divide and maybe step back a bit from the characteristics that you're talking about there?
Yeah, so I would be quite challenging, and I would say I think the responsibility almost entirely sits with the leaders. Okay. They're the people with the authority, they're the people with the power and the ability to make changes, and who should have the wisdom to say, we need to make this firm work, and the way of doing that is to bring everyone along on the journey. I think juniors can kind of curry favour with the leaders in the sense that finding out how someone might want information delivered to them or what kind of working hours they put in, and so good and bad times to message and that sort of thing, you will get them on side a lot more. But that said, I think the leader needs to be the one who does try and do that work in bridging that difference. I think also making space for juniors to contribute. So rather than just feeling frustrated and going, well, they want all this feedback and they're not doing the work, and if they don't get the feedback, they're not going to do the work how we want them to. So therefore, I'm just going to circumnavigate them and get someone else to do it. You've got to find ways to bring them on and to contribute, because also once the juniors start to find the real meaning and you find that way of working with them as a leader, then you've got a superpower, because you've got other firms and other partners who aren't doing that quite as well. And again, I'm talking in like polar extremes here, because most people are making an effort and are trying to do it. But I think it's just about every little step that you can take towards bridging that gap as a leader, the better.
Yeah.
And how do leaders do that then? Because you say in the book that leaders get sort of stuck in that we're just different sort of behaviour. And they've grown up in the behaviour that they're then role modelling, right? That's why they're doing what they're doing, because they think that's the right answer. So how do they acknowledge those differences and move beyond we're just different to actually starting to accommodate those and work productively with juniors who just behave and work in a very different way?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to get to know those people as individuals. So don't see them as Gen Z, see them as that's Yazmine, or that's anyone else who's in the workplace, and ask them those insightful questions, do the listening, make it really clear that you are interested in them and in what matters to them, what makes them tick, what they like about work, how they like to work, so that then as a leader, you can move beyond that idea of we're just different and that's that, to actually we have these things in common. And I also think I really encourage leaders, I talk about this in the book as well, to move away from just thinking it's how you work, but actually have you got stuff in common? You might find that you both really like playing paddle, or you've both had Labradors as a childhood pet. It can be the smallest thing, but it just starts to build that foundation, that framework for then connecting with that person as a human being.
And would they have seen that sort of behaviour when they were juniors, do you think, from theirs? Given that would have been sort of 30, 40 years ago.
I think it's a good challenge. I think yes and no, because I think everyone can look back on someone in the past of their career and go, I really liked working with that person, they just got me. Or there was that amazing boss and we used to talk about pasta because we both at home make pasta, like silly examples, but that sense that someone really sees you for who you are can be so empowering in the workplace. And I think they will know that, but they just maybe won't have seen it applied across the entire group. And I think that's where the challenge now is it's not having that one relationship, it's trying to build up a good relationship with everybody.
And so moving on to the role of L&D, particularly with leaders, what strategies or practices have you seen L&D particularly looking at developing leaders trying to unify multi-generational teams? What work have either you done or you've seen that's worked well in that space?
So speaking to both those experiences, what I've seen and what I've done, I think one of the things is facilitated conversations without doubt. So however you do that, whether that's a workshop where you happen to invite a range of different generations, or whether it's organising group coaching or team coaching, creating a really safe space where people are allowed to ask questions about one another and to try to get to know one another better is incredibly powerful. And I think it's really important to move that away from the pub or away from that kind of setting. We want it in a space where everyone feels comfortable and where you can genuinely have conversations without shouting over music. Those stuff is great. It's nice to do those things too. And if that works for everyone in your team, then amazing. But as well as that, you want something more formalised around those facilitated conversations. I also think training on communication styles is really powerful, and being able to get people to think about, as I was saying before, how they like to talk to one another, how they like to receive information, because we'll find there are some generational differences with that, but we'll just also find that there are some human differences. One thing that I often do with firms is I get people to write almost like their own top trump card of their communication style and the things that they like, and say, if you had to put this above your desk and talk about who you are as a person, what would you say? What would you need people to know about you? Imagine it literally hanging from the ceiling above you. And I think that's really, that people really like that idea, and then being able to sit in that room and go, well, I'm Katie and I like to work these hours and this is the way I like people to talk to me. People go, I just never realised that. I had absolutely no idea. And then I often get messages afterwards going, that was a complete game changer. I'm getting on so much better with the person I sit next to now.
So good.
Yeah, it's really good. Also reverse mentoring, of course, but I feel like that's over talked about and a bit boring, so I'm not going to.
But do you think it's effective?
I think it's effective, but I think there's a lot out there about why it's effective and how it's effective, and you can go and read up on that. And
So just thinking about what you said there on that note, how can younger professionals better align with the expectations of more senior colleagues without compromising their own beliefs and morals?
Yeah, I mean, that is such a good question. I think it is a challenge because you're going into a workplace where there is an expectation that you're going to behave in a particular way, and with a value set and cultures which are often dictated by the older generations in the workplace. I think it's about picking your battles. So if there's something that's really important to you, if that is the thing that you want to make important to you, whether that is you work very regular hours. I keep saying hours because I think it is just such a sticking point with different generations. Or that you cannot carry on a piece of work without feedback. Like, pick those things. Don't get overly principled about it, because as soon as we get really principled about something and we become about the principles, not about the connection, that's where arguments and conflict starts. So if it really matters, then say it. If it doesn't, let some of it go. And realise that as long as you've got a leader that is trying as well, and you're trying, that's the best outcome that you can hope for. So, asking those good questions around how you should work and, when should I come to you for feedback, will, one, show that you recognise that not every moment is a good moment, but secondly, it's helping your manager see that feedback's really important to you.
So just tailing off from that, what advice would you give early career professionals navigating a workplace with more traditional leadership roles?
So I think the other thing that I would add, in addition to what I've already said, is give the senior leaders the benefit of the doubt. A lot of the time, they're trying to navigate a world that is just as new to them in a way as the world that you're navigating in starting work. And that most of them want to be super sensitive and to really respect the values and the cultures of the younger generations, but they're really scared about what they're treading on. So I recently had someone talk to me about a member of, and I'm going to work really hard on making sure that I'm faithful to this example. So someone that they'd worked with who had been previously known as she, now wanted to be known as they, but wanted a boyfriend. And the person was like, I'm so respectful of all of this. I don't understand it. I'd love to understand it because I want to support this person. I can't ask the questions. I don't know what to do. And I think for me, that kind of encapsulates very nicely that there's that desire there to respect whoever, whatever, but just not having the language, not having the way to talk about it. And I think whether we're talking about kind of attitudes towards sexuality, or whether we're talking about work styles or anything else, giving that person the benefit of the doubt. They probably want you to be okay, but they just might not have the language and the way to do that.
And they might feel awkward about it because
really
they don't want
awkward.
to hurt the person's feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've all been there, haven't we?
Yeah. And not wanting to be clumsy, but being a bit clumsy, and that's kind of okay, to kind of recognising that they're trying. Yeah.
That's lovely.
Do you think there are leaders that aren't willing to try? And if so, do you have any theory as to why that is? Because certainly I think we're seeing some people doing exactly that, trying, even if they don't understand it. And there are others that just, I think, have a preconception that this new attitude to work is lazy, or that they're not willing to do what I did when I was that. And how do you have to approach those people differently?
I think so. I think you do. I think it's fear sometimes. If we give them the benefit of the doubt, there's fear there about, I don't know if this new thing is going to work, and I'm very comfortable with how things currently are. I think often peer pressure can actually help with those people when they see that some of their colleagues who had previously also struggled are now trying things differently. But then you always get kind of the stalwarts who still won't change. One firm that I worked with recently had totally had enough of a particular group and sold that part of the firm, because they were like, we just can't, they're so out of line with the culture that we now want, and we've tried everything, and that just needs to go now, which is obviously more extreme than lots of firms are prepared to do. But it might be performance management conversations, actually, even if those people are at a very senior level. I realise it's difficult depending on your firm structure, but if it's critical to your firm and you need to keep those younger people and they're being put off working in particular departments by dinosaurs, let's say it, then maybe those dinosaurs, it's time for them to go.
And it speaks to your point earlier that it's the leadership at the very top of the firm is what counts, right?
Yeah.
And if that firm is seeing that and they've made a decision,
Yeah.
then that's how that plays out.
You can't really have a message that, we're really inclusive and we understand, and then you've got senior people who are complete contradiction to what you're putting out there. So it sounds like an extreme measure, but actually that clearly is what they needed to do, and I think that's actually very, very bold, very respectful.
Sort of leading on from that, and you've answered some of this already, but there's probably more to explore here. Things like work-life balance, feedback, they're the things they're asking for. They don't, to me, seem unreasonable.
No.
Why do you think leaders are seeing that as unreasonable requests?
Because they own the business and they want to maximise profit, and they don't see that that is the way to maximise profit. And the business model that they've been brought up on is that you use the juniors, you absolutely destroy the juniors, and they drive the profit, and then you get the profit when you move up. And they feel, I think lots of them, that it's unfair that pattern is being broken and that their profits are being diluted by needing to get people to work in different ways.
And do you think that model might change as a result? There's lots of talk at the moment about target hours and time recording in the traditional sense. Do you think that maybe that is being scrutinised more than ever now as a result of that?
I mean, I think there's legal pressure, isn't there, around what you're allowed to do in terms of working hours. Definitely pressure coming from Europe. I guess it depends whether we align ourselves with the US or Europe in terms of which direction we go in. I think also, the old debate that you go back to, when I teach undergrads about business and management and we talk about what's the way you maximise the return on a person, is it by prioritising their long-term well-being or prioritising their short-term efficiency? And in a sense the jury's out, but then maybe we just have to make a choice that we don't want to live in a world where efficiency is the only driver, and we want to live in a world where actually we want nice human beings who are still able to work into their 50s and 60s and aren't totally burnt out, and they like work and they say nice things about the firm.
And we've talked about training leaders, or what L&D can do to support leaders. We've talked about what juniors can maybe do in terms of changing their communication style. If we take all of them together for a moment, is there things that L&D can do with everybody together as a group to try and, again, bridge these gaps and close the differences?
Yeah, I think there are. I think you have to be very gentle with that multi-generational approach. So I think, like I was saying before, small teams, facilitated discussions works well. I think when it's enforced at a firm level and you've got big groups, often the senior members of staff feel very exposed by that approach. They really don't like it. They especially don't like receiving any sort of training when you the laughter makes me go you've experienced this. Don't like receiving any training when there's more junior people there who might realise that they don't know everything. And that's, again, not true for all partners. Some of them are wonderfully good at reflecting on the gaps in their knowledge and are happy to share those. But I think those kind of whole firm things can backfire. You've got to be really careful.
Yeah. I guess in the media at the moment, there seems to be a lot of conversation around generational tension and about how most industries are actually moving away from that and we're seeing less of it. But I kind of get the sense that it's different for the legal sector. So why do you think that is, that we're kind of still stuck with these problems and we don't seem to be kind of moving a lot in the right direction?
I think partly the partnership model does that for the reasons that I was saying. So the business model being you've worked up and through, and so you then expect the juniors to work really hard. And that large joint ownership model makes things much slower. Decision making is a lot more difficult. It's harder to change direction and to change culture. You haven't just got a CEO going, and this will now be the thing that we're doing, and then everyone falling into line. And I think also they're just very hierarchical, probably for similar reasons again, because you earn your stripes and then you're very proud of the fact that you're senior. And we see partners who aren't like that, of course we do. But then it's just, if we look at the whole sector, there is still a lot of traditionalism there.
Of course, it's a generalisation, isn't it, of law as a whole. So I guess on that note, Are there any signs of progression or innovation in the legal field when it comes to generational collaboration in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, in the way that there are signs everywhere, in part because we have to make it happen. If we don't, the firms will fail, and you can't just not have junior lawyers or junior staff members. So you've got to make sure that you bring them on board. In terms of specific progress, I'm not sure that there is something in particular that I could point to and go, that's changed, that's good, that's for the better, other than that general push to recognise that soon the generations that we treat as the problem generations, they'll be the ones in charge. So everything will shift eventually anyway. I suppose where it would be nice to see a difference would be more people at work saying, I like my manager, I respect my manager, this is great, we have a good working relationship. So I think it's probably better to look at it in terms of pockets and where we see teams making progress. I find it so satisfying in my work when you've got a team where you've got someone who's very resistant and then the juniors, and you see that movement over 6 months of working with them. There's one team in particular I'm thinking of who made such a big shift over the 6 months that we were working together, particularly the senior lawyers within that team, and really updating their view of the junior staff members, really updating their view around working hours and around home working. And now that's a much, much happier team.
Oh, wow.
And that's lovely to see.
Yeah,
but it's just individual effort.
Yeah. And that's all it is. You've got to meet each other halfway.
Yeah.
I think that's clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just before we start to think about wrapping up, you talked about the partnership model there and the challenges that come with that, with the decision making. And for viewers and listeners who were at the conference, we obviously had a big chat about whether the partnership model is the right model for juniors and the way they work. I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but do you think the partnership model survives this change of generations and the way that they work?
Yeah, I don't know if I could give you like the answer of like that's the right thing. I suppose in terms of the way that I would think about it, it definitely can do, but it requires people to be good human beings, and to recognise that if you want the firm to survive and to thrive, then there's a benefit to having a good culture where the juniors are respected and given the kind of work and work-life balance that they want, and the feedback and everything else. There's nothing to say that that can't work. We see so many, if you think about social enterprises, and they're often built on these sorts of principles. Often they've got more than one owner. There's no reason why it can't work, but you just need the tipping point in the firm to be, you've got enough people who buy into that idea that we work with the juniors, not against them. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's survived previous generational issues, hasn't it? You know, it's survived the boomers versus the millennials, and then like we're now heading towards it more being like the next generations in combat with one another. So, as
you say, it comes down to being good humans at the end of the day, basically.
But it's not a new thing, is it? This multi-generational difference and having these issues. And I'm sure if you spoke to a lot of the senior people, they would have experienced similar issues, just on a different scale. And it's interesting.
My mum, when she went to work, so she's like in her 80s now, but she got sent home because she wore a skirt that was too short, like in the 60s, and was, told off for being, was one of the first people in the cinema dancing to rock and roll when it came out. And her parents were like, this is horrifying, what's going on? And at work getting in trouble, it's no different. And now it's, the lower rungs of her generation who are the senior partners who are making those decisions and tutting at other people for not working hard enough.
Last couple of questions then, I think. What's one myth about generational differences that you'd just love to see disappear? And you've talked a lot about it today, and there's probably something in what we've already said, but maybe something else stands out.
I think for me, just the idea that anyone is acting in a way that is intentionally difficult, that's the thing that really annoys me. And like conversations about I can't believe we've got through the whole of recording this without the word snowflakes coming up, but like it annoys me so much. So that would be the thing where like if we could shift one thing, it would be the mindset that anyone is intentionally being flaky or difficult or anything else, and just recognizing that times change. needs become different, that's great that we have updated this sort of mental model. And it's good to want to be happy at work. That's not an unreasonable request.
Yeah. So I guess my last question would be, if you can give an organisation or anyone listening any piece of advice to try and foster better multi-generational collaboration, what would it be?
Work on relationships between one person and one person, rather than seeing it as an organisational problem that needs to be solved in the whole. So picking out those relationships where things could be better and looking at working with that group, that small 2 or maybe 3 people, and moving things along, and then moving on to the next one and moving on to the next one. And that's the way, I think, to start to change things rather than big policy.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess the next topic would be on time and people actually making the time for those conversations. But no, I love that. Not just writing people off as a group, you know, Gen Z or whatever they want to say. And also the other way around as well, I guess. It's not just all the dinosaurs, you know, get to know them, get to know why they're maybe a little bit resistant, because a lot of them probably do want to understand.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. That has been a wonderful conversation. Really, really, really interesting. And I'm sure that our listeners probably have had a lot to take away from that. Thank you again, Katie, for joining us today. That was a brilliant conversation. If you'd like to follow Katie on socials and also check out her book, it will be linked below. The book is called The 10 Toughest Leadership Problems and How to Solve Them. And that is available just now. So thank you again for tuning in. If you'd like to subscribe and listen to more of our podcasts, we've also got 2 other episodes out that are available on our YouTube and our Spotify. Thanks so much. Bye.